It was nearly midnight when the blue and red lights flashed across the narrow street of Maplewood Drive. Rain dripped from the power lines, painting the asphalt in streaks of color. Inside a small house at the end of the block, a woman stood frozen by the window, clutching a cup of cold coffee. Her name was Claire Dawson, a single mother who had learned to live in the silence left behind by her husband's disappearance 3 years ago. She spent her nights working late shifts as a private investigator for a local agency, tracking liars, cheaters, and thieves, but at home she was just mom. Her 10-year-old son, Ethan, was asleep in the next room when the knock came. It was firm, official, the kind of knock that didn't wait long for an answer. Claire's instincts sharpened. She turned off the kitchen light, peered through the peephole. Two men in dark uniforms stood outside, police badges glinting under the rain. One of them, tall and broad-shouldered, raised his hand again. "Miss Dawson, open up, police department." Her pulse quickened. She hadn't done anything wrong, but years of working cases had taught her one thing: authority doesn't always mean safety. She opened the door halfway. "What's this about?" The tall one spoke first. "We have a warrant for your arrest, ma'am. You're under investigation for identity fraud and obstruction of justice." The words hit her like a brick. That's absurd, there must be some mistake. The second officer, younger, avoided her eyes. "Please step outside, ma'am. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Claire's mind raced. Fraud, obstruction, she hadn't touched a case in 2 weeks, something wasn't right. She glanced at their uniforms, badges, holsters, body cams, but something subtle nagged her. Their patches looked off, slightly faded, slightly wrong. She forced a calm tone. "Can I at least see the warrant?" The tall one smirked. "You can see it downtown." He grabbed her arm. That was the moment everything changed. Claire's survival instincts kicked in. She didn't resist, but her eyes darted toward the car parked outside, an unmarked black SUV with no department plate. Vague cops. She knew it instantly. Still, she went along, her mind already calculating. She didn't want to wake Ethan. She didn't want to provoke them, not yet. She let them cuff her hands, cold metal biting into her wrists. As they led her to the SUV, her eyes caught something in the reflection of a nearby puddle. One of the men wasn't wearing regulation boots. Civilian sneakers. Confirmed. Her heart thundered. Whoever they weren't real cops, but she couldn't expose that, not until she knew why they wanted her. Inside the SUV, the air smelled of cigarettes and damp leather. The tall one got behind the wheel, the younger man in the passenger seat. They didn't radio dispatch. They didn't say her rights. Claire spoke softly. "You're making a big mistake." The driver sneered. "Yeah, we'll see about that." They drove in silence for a few minutes, cutting through backstreets instead of heading downtown. Claire's pulse rose. They were going away from the city. Her voice hardened. "Where are you taking me?" No answer. Rain hammered against the windshield. The road narrowed, wooded area ahead. Then she saw it. The driver's side mirror reflected a flash of something familiar, a small scar running across the tall man's neck. She remembered it. A client. 3 months ago, she'd investigated a corporate embezzlement case. One of the suspects, Ryan Cole, had that same scar. He'd disappeared before trial. Now he was driving her car into the woods. Her brain screamed. It wasn't a random arrest, it was revenge. She needed to act. She shifted her cuffed hands, feeling the edges of her wrist pressing against the seatbelt latch. Quietly, she unlatched it, letting it dangle without sound. The car slowed. They stopped by an abandoned cabin near the forest edge. The younger man spoke finally. "Let's just do this quick." His voice trembled. Ryan glared. "No one's gonna miss her." He pulled her out of the car, rain hitting her face like cold needles. Claire stumbled but kept her footing. She looked up at him, meeting his eyes. "You think you're smart, Ryan, but you made one mistake." He smirked. "Oh yeah, what's that?" "You picked the wrong woman." Before he could react, Claire slammed her shoulder into him, twisting her wrists against the cuffs. Pain shot through her arms, but the cuff chains snapped against the car door handle. Years of training weren't wasted. The younger man panicked. "Ryan, she's..." Too late. Claire grabbed his taser, turned it, and fired. The crackle of electricity filled the air as he collapsed to the ground. Ryan lunged, but Claire ducked, driving her knee into his ribs. They struggled in the mud, rain pouring harder. His strength overpowered her. He pinned her down, pressing a gun to her jaw. "You ruined my life, you nosy." A blinding flash of headlights cut through the trees. Another car. Ryan froze, then cursed under his breath. He yanked her by the arm and dragged her toward the cabin. Claire screamed, "Help!" The headlights flicked off. Whoever had arrived didn't move. Ryan pushed her inside, locking the door behind them. The smell of mold and gasoline filled the air. Inside the darkness, Claire heard the faint hum of a generator and something else, a phone vibrating on the table. Ryan grabbed it. "Change of plans," he whispered into the phone. "We got her." Silence, then a voice on the other end, cold, male, calculated. "Good, bring her to me, alive." Claire's blood turned to ice. Whoever that voice belonged to, he was the real threat. She glanced toward the window, saw Ethan's face flash in her memory, asleep in his bed, unaware his mother was being hunted. Her heart hardened. She had to survive this. But before she could plan her next move, Ryan's phone rang again. He turned away to answer. That's when Claire saw it, an open metal box under the table. Inside were police badges, dozens of them, fake, each with different names. This wasn't random, it was a network. A fake police ring. She whispered to herself, "Dear God, how deep does this go?" Ryan turned back. "You just stay quiet, you'll see soon enough who's really in charge here." But Claire wasn't just a victim, she was a detective, and no matter how dark it got tonight, she knew truth had a way of finding light. Outside, the headlights returned, closer this time. A figure stepped out wearing a hood, walking toward the cabin. Ryan smirked, "Right on time." Claire's heart pounded as the door opened, the stranger stepping into the flickering light. When the hood came off, she froze. It was Detective Allen, her old partner from the department, the one she trusted most. And he was smiling. "Hello, Claire," he said, "miss me?" The room spun. The last person she expected was standing with the enemy. Allen glanced at the fake badges. The cuffs and her bruised wrists. "She's smarter than I thought," he said to Ryan. "We'll need to move faster." "Move where?" Claire demanded. Allen stepped closer, his voice calm but cold. "You've been digging in the wrong files, and now you're going to help us erase what you found." Her breath caught. "You're part of this." Allen smiled faintly. "I'm not part of it, Claire, I run it." Claire felt her stomach drop as realization struck. The fake cop ring wasn't just a criminal group, it was a shadow operation run by law enforcement itself. Her own partner had been leading it all along. Allen leaned down, whispering, "You wanted the truth, now you're living in it." He motioned to Ryan, "Tie her up, we're leaving before sunrise." The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Allen's badge, real, not fake, gleaming under the flicker of a dying bulb. It wasn't counterfeit. It was official. Claire Dawson, the detective who thought she'd been framed by imposters, was now staring straight into the face of the real corruption she'd spent her life fighting. And as the door slammed shut, the only sound left was the rain and the whisper of her own promise. "You'll regret this, Allen. I'll expose every last one of you." The storm outside grew louder, and the lights flickered out, leaving only silence and the sound of footsteps closing in. The faint crackle of firewood was the first sound Claire heard as she regained consciousness. Her wrists burned from the zip ties cutting deep into her skin, and her head throbbed where Ryan had struck her. The room was dim, lit only by a flickering lantern that cast distorted shadows on the cabin walls. The smell of gasoline still lingered, mixed with wet earth and mold. Claire's eyes slowly adjusted, revealing stacks of papers and old police files scattered across a wooden table. Her phone, her bag gone, only her thoughts remained sharp. A creak came from behind her. "Allen." He leaned casually against the doorframe, the same easy grin she remembered from years ago when they solved cases together. Back then, that grin meant safety. Now it felt like a knife pressed against her throat. "Good morning, partner," he said softly. "You always did have a talent for getting in over your head." Claire's voice cracked, but the fire in her eyes was alive. "Why, Allen, you were the one who taught me to trust the badge. What happened to you?" He walked closer, his boots crunching on broken glass. "You want to know what happened? The system failed me, failed all of us. We spend years catching criminals just to see them walk free, so I built something better, a system that doesn't play by their rules. Clu's jaw tightened. You built a gang wearing police uniforms. He chuckled, not a gang, Cla, a movement, real justice without red tape. Justice, she spat, you kidnapped me in front of my son. His expression hardened for the first time. You shouldn't have reopened the coal case, you were supposed to leave it buried. Her stomach twisted. You mean Run Cole, the guy who stole from veterans' pensions and vanished, you helped him disappear, didn't you? Ulan didn't deny it. I gave him protection, he paid for it. That money funds what we do, we take from the worst, use it to fix what the law won't. Cla stared at him in disbelief. You've become the very thing you swore to fight. Ulan sighed, crouching in front of her. You always did have that moral streak, that's why I liked working with you, but the world isn't black and white, Cla, it's survival. Ryan entered, his cheek still bruised from their earlier fight. Boss, we gotta move, someone followed us last night. Ulan straightened. Who? Couldn't tell, just headlights near the ridge, they disappeared when I checked. Ulan's eyes darkened, could be one of her friends. He looked back at Cla, who knows where you are? No one, she lied instantly. But Ulan had always been good at reading her face. He smiled thinly. You were always terrible at lying to me. He turned to Run, take her outside, we're changing locations. Ryan yanked her up by the arm. The cold air slapped her face as they stepped into the rain. The forest smelled of pine and rot, the sky still gray from the storm. They pushed her toward a black van hidden behind the trees. Inside were boxes filled with weapons, fake IDs, and several laptops. This was no small operation, it was an underground force. As Run loaded the gear, Cla studied the scene, memorizing everything. Her detective's mind worked silently. Directions, time, distance from the city, every detail mattered if she ever got out. She was shoved into the back seat, hands bound tight. The van started moving. Through the tinted window, she caught a glimpse of a figure far back in the woods, a small flash of movement, someone watching. She wasn't alone out here. Her pulse quickened, someone had followed them. Ryan drove while Ulan made a call. His tone turned colder, businesslike. Yes, we have her, tonight at the docks. I'll deliver the files and the detective. The docks, that meant the old shipping yard on the river's edge, isolated, perfect for disappearing people. Cla forced herself to stay still, feigning exhaustion, but her mind was already forming a plan. The van hit a bump, something metal rolled beneath her seat. She shifted her foot slowly, feeling it. A small screwdriver, probably dropped by Ryan earlier when he'd been unloading gear. Lucky. She pressed her heel against it and managed to slide it closer until she could trap it between her shoes. If she could loosen the ties, she might get one shot. They drove for nearly an hour before turning down an old gravel road toward a boarded-up farmhouse. The rain had stopped, leaving a thick fog curling over the fields. Ryan opened the back doors and dragged her out. Ulan motioned to a shed nearby. We'll rest here till sunset. Inside it was dark and cold. Dust motes floated in thin shafts of light through the broken roof. They chained her to a support beam, the metal tight around her wrist. Ulan crouched near her again, voice low. You're going to cooperate, Cla. You're going to log into your agency's database and delete every trace of the investigation. In return, you walk away, alive. She looked up slowly. You really think I'd help you destroy evidence of your crimes? He smiled faintly. You will when you realize the alternative. He reached into his coat and pulled out a photo, Uthan's school portrait. Cla's chest tightened. Cute kid, Ulan murmured. Lives at 34 Muplutz Drive, right? Her voice broke. Don't you dare touch him. That's up to you. He left the photo on the ground in front of her, turned and walked out. When the door shut, Cla exhaled shakily. Her hands trembled not from fear but fury. Uthan was her weakness, they'd found it. And now she had no choice but to fight back. She glanced toward the corner of the shed where the screwdriver had fallen when they carried her inside. Inch by inch, she dragged her foot toward it, stretching until the edge of her shoe hooked it. Slowly, painfully, she lifted it toward her hands. Every second felt like an hour. The sound of Alan and Ryan talking outside was muffled by the walls. She began working on the cuffs, twist, press, turn, the metal scraped her skin raw. Then click. Freedom. She didn't waste a second. She grabbed a piece of broken glass from the floor and sliced the rope binding her ankles. Then she reached for the lantern by the door and turned it low. Her plan wasn't to run yet, not until she had proof. She needed to know what Alan was hiding, something big enough to destroy him from the inside. She slipped quietly out the back window of the shed, landing softly on damp soil. The fog cloaked her like a veil. Behind the farmhouse, the van was parked beside a smaller car. Its trunk was slightly open. Inside, she saw a laptop. She powered it on. To her shock, the screen loaded with folders labeled Operation Warden, Asset Transfers, and Surveillance Reports. Each file was encrypted, but the metadata showed locations, bank accounts, and officer names, all tied to fake arrests, kidnappings, and disappearances. This wasn't just a rogue cop ring, it was a network spanning multiple cities. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind her. Claire spun. Ryan stood there, gun raised. Well, well, he sneered, guess we found the detective again. Claire's eyes darted to the laptop. You don't want to shoot me, Ryan. You fire that gun, every nearby house will hear it. He grinned. There are no houses for miles. But before he could pull the trigger, a deep voice echoed from the trees. Drop it. Ryan froze. A figure emerged from the fog dressed in black tactical gear, face half covered, a rifle aimed steady at Ryan's chest. Ryan's hand shook. Who the hell? Drop the weapon, the voice repeated. Ryan turned his gun slightly, about to risk a shot, when a silenced round hit the dirt beside his boot. He jumped and threw the gun down. The stranger stepped closer, grabbing Ryan by the collar and knocking him unconscious with one blow. Claire stared, breathing hard. Who are you? The man lowered his rifle slightly. Name, Marcus. I work with your agency. You didn't come back last night. Your partner sent me to check on you. Relief flooded her, but suspicion lingered. How did you find me? He nodded toward a small tracker clipped to her jacket collar. You put this on every time you go out on a case. Good habit. She let out a shaky breath. Ethan, my son, he's safe. He's with your neighbor. We've got someone watching the house. Tears of relief pricked her eyes, but she forced herself to stay focused. Alan's here. He's leading this whole operation. They're planning to move tonight to the docks. Marcus's expression darkened. Then we'll end it tonight. He handed her a small earpiece and a spare sidearm. We take them alive. You ready? Claire loaded the weapon, her voice cold and steady. I've been ready since the night he betrayed me. They dragged Ryan's unconscious body into the shed, tied him up, and waited until the sun began to set. Through the cracks in the wooden wall, Claire watched Alan packing outside, phone pressed to his ear, giving orders. The van's engine started again. Alan opened the back door. Load everything, we're leaving in 10. As he turned away, Claire whispered to Marcus, follow my lead. They slipped through the fog, keeping low until they reached the second car. Claire climbed in quietly as Alan's van rolled down the road. Marcus followed behind, headlights off. The drive to the docks was long and silent. Claire stared out the window, her heart pounding, not from fear but from rage that had been simmering for years. She wasn't the hunted anymore, she was the hunter. When the van finally stopped, they were at the edge of the abandoned riverside docks. Rusted cranes stood like skeletons over the water. Dim lights glowed from a warehouse nearby. Through the windshield, she saw men unloading crates, all dressed in fake police uniforms. And there, by the pier, Alan stood talking to a man in a tailored suit. Claire's voice trembled. That's him, the voice on the phone. Whoever he is, he's funding them. Marcus gripped his weapon. Then let's find out what he's buying. They stepped out of the car quietly, staying behind stacks of containers. Claire watched as Alan handed the man a tablet, the same one from the laptop earlier. This is everything, Alan said. Every record, every transfer, every name. Once you wire the rest, it's yours. The man nodded. You've done well, Detective Allen. After tonight, no one will ever trace this back to us. Claire's blood ran cold. She recognized that voice. It was Captain Morris, their former chief. The corruption went all the way to the top. Marcus whispered, you were right, this isn't just a fake cop ring, it's a police cover operation. Before Claire could respond, one of the guards spotted movement near the shadows. Hey, someone's out there. Flashlights swept the area. Alan turned sharply, eyes narrowing, then his gaze met hers through the darkness. For a split second, everything stopped. Recognition, shock, then pure fury. He shouted Claire. Gunfire erupted. Marcus pulled her behind a crate as bullets sliced through the air. Sparks flew from metal containers. The sound of water slapping against the dock mixed with the chaos. Claire fired back, aiming for the lights above to plunge the area into partial darkness. Alan's voice echoed through the din. You can't win, Claire, you don't even know who you're fighting. She shouted back, I know enough to take you down. A flashbang exploded nearby, blinding lights swallowing everything. When the smoke cleared, Alan was gone. So were the files. And the sound of an engine roared from the pier, the van speeding toward the open road, taillights disappearing into the night. Claire staggered to her feet, heart racing. Marcus looked at her grimly, he's running. Claire's jaw tightened, then we chase. She stared into the darkness, rain starting again over the river. Alan still had the evidence, but now she had something more powerful, truth. And she wasn't stopping until the world knew it. The rain came harder now, slicing through the night like silver blades. The glow of taillights shimmered across the wet asphalt ahead as Cla's car roared through the winding road. Mucka's gripped the wheel, eyes narrowed, every muscle tense. Alan's van was fast, but not fast enough to outrun the truth. Cla reloaded her weapon, staring through the rain-streaked windshield. He's heading toward the East Bridge. Once he's across, we'll lose him. Mucka's nodded, then we cut him off before that. He slammed the brakes, drifting sharply onto a dirt trail that cut across the forest, an old service path parallel to the main road. The van's lights flickered between the trees as it sped ahead. Cla's heart pounded. He won't give up those files, he'll burn them first. Then we don't give him the chance. Thunder cracked overhead. The world became a blur of rain, speed, and rage. Cla's mind flashed with images of Uthan asleep, unaware that his mother was chasing monsters who once wore badges like hers. She whispered to herself, you're not getting away again, Alan. Moments later, the trail ended, merging back onto the main road just before the bridge. Mucka's turned sharply, blocking the lane. The van came into view, barreling forward, headlights glaring. It swerved to avoid the car, but Cla was already out, standing in the rain, gun raised, face cold as stone. End it, Alan, she shouted over the roar of thunder. No more running. The van screeched to a halt a few yards away. The driver's door opened slowly. Alan stepped out, drenched, his weapon drawn but his expression calm, almost regretful. You were always the stubborn one, Cla. Drop it, she ordered. He smiled faintly. You won't shoot me, you need me alive. Mucka's moved behind her, flanking him. She doesn't, but I might. Alan's eyes darted between them, calculating, then he lowered his gun slightly. All right, let's talk. Cla's voice trembled not from fear but betrayal. You kidnapped me, framed me, threatened my son, and now you want to talk? Alan sighed. You still don't understand. The files, Operation Warden, it's bigger than me, bigger than you. If you release it, you'll start a war in this city. Every cop, every judge, half of them are on the list. You think the public can handle that? Cla took a step closer. The public deserves the truth. Alan's expression shifted, something between sorrow and warning. You expose them and they'll kill you before the news breaks, and not just you, Uthan too. Lightning illuminated his face, cold, wet, human. For a brief second, she saw the man she once trusted, the mentor who taught her to chase justice no matter the cost. But that man was gone. She kept her gun steady. You already tried to kill me, I've got nothing left to lose. Alan looked down slowly, then chuckled darkly. Then you're finally one of us. The words made her stomach twist. Then he moved too fast. A flash, a click, he threw a small metal object toward the van. A grenade. Get down, Muckas shouted. The explosion shattered the air, fire engulfing the van. The force threw Cla to the ground, pain shooting up her arm, debris rained down like sparks from hell. When she looked up, Alan was gone again, disappearing into the forest beyond the burning wreck. Muckas coughed, pulling himself up. He's heading to the riverbank, go. They ran through the mud, weaving between trees, chasing the shadow of a man who knew the land better than anyone. The smell of smoke and pine filled the air. They reached a clearing by the river. Ulan stood there, breathing hard, gun aimed at his own chest. "Don't," Kla shouted. He smirked weakly. "It's over, Kla, you win." "Drop it, Ulan, you can still." "Still what?" His voice cracked, desperate now. "Rot in a cell while the real ones walk free. You think you've done something noble here. You can't fix corruption by becoming it." He laughed bitterly, "And you can't stop it by pretending the law still works." For a moment, only the rain spoke between them. Then, with slow, deliberate motion, Ulan tossed a small USB drive into the river. It vanished beneath the dark water. Kla's eyes widened. "What did you?" He smiled faintly. "The files gone forever, just like the truth you were chasing." Rage burned in her chest. "You destroyed everything." Ulan lowered his gun, eyes tired. "No, Kla, I saved you from it." Before she could respond, a shot rang out. Ulan's body jerked back, Mukaza's rifle still aimed at him. Kla gasped, rushing forward as Ulan collapsed near the water's edge, blood mixed with rain flowing down his sleeve. Mukaza's voice was hard. He was raising his gun again. "I had to." Ulan coughed, eyes fading, yet a ghost of that familiar grin returned. "Guess I trained you too well." Kla knelt beside him, gripping his collar. "Where?" "The backup drive, Ulan, you made copies, I know you." He struggled to speak, voice barely a whisper. "Warehouse, 17A, behind the cold room." Then he was still. The rain fell heavier, drumming against his motionless body. Kla sat there for a long moment, her breath shallow, eyes unfocused. The man who once saved her life now lay dead by her hand or by justice's cruel balance. Mukaz placed a hand on her shoulder. "We should move, cops will be here soon." She nodded faintly, standing, staring at the river where the USB had sunk. But inside she knew Ulan always had a contingency. He never trusted anyone completely. Warehouse 17A, that was their next target. Hours later, dawn began to creep over the horizon as they reached the outskirts of the industrial district. The world felt cold, hollow. The storm had passed, but Kla's heart hadn't. They parked near an abandoned seafood warehouse marked 17A, rusted signs, broken windows, and the faint hum of distant traffic filled the air. Inside, the air was freezing, literally. Old refrigeration units lined the walls, and the scent of salt and decay clung to everything. Kla's flashlight beam caught a small keypad near the back. She typed Ulan's old badge number. The lock clicked open. Inside a hidden compartment lay several hard drives, neatly labeled. Her breath caught. "Operation Warden, Phase 3. Mukaz grinned slightly. "Guess you were right." She stared at the drives, her reflection in the metal surface haunted, tired, determined. "We're turning this in, every name, every file." Mukaz hesitated. "You sure you want to? Once this goes public, there's no going back. They'll come for you." She looked him dead in the eyes. "They already have." She pulled one drive free, tucking it into her jacket. Then she turned toward the rising sun through the broken window. It painted her in gold, symbol of the justice she refused to surrender. But just as they stepped outside, the distant wail of sirens echoed through the empty streets. Mukaz frowned. "You called backup?" "No," she said softly. A chill ran through her. Black SUVs appeared at the end of the block, tires screeching. Men in tactical gear poured out, real police badges flashing under the early light. But something in their eyes told her this wasn't a rescue. One of them shouted, "Claire Dawson, drop your weapon, you're under arrest for obstruction and homicide." Her stomach dropped. No, this isn't right." Marcus stepped forward, raising his badge. "She's innocent, I'm Agent Marcus Hale with." Gunfire erupted. Marcus ducked, grabbing Claire's arm. "Run." They sprinted down an alley as bullets shattered glass around them. The truth was out there, inside the drive pressed to Claire's chest, but now the entire system wanted her silenced. She stumbled behind a dumpster, breath ragged. "They knew we'd come here, someone tipped them off." Marcus clenched his jaw. "We can't trust anyone now, not even the agency." Claire looked at him, eyes fierce despite the fear. "Then we trust each other, and we finish what Alan started only the right way." Marcus nodded slowly. "What's the plan?" She tightened her grip on the drive. "We leak it, every file, every name, straight to the press." He hesitated. That's suicide. It's justice. She looked down the alley where morning light met the smoke of burning tires. They took everything from me, my partner, my peace, my safety, but they don't get my silence. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder again, echoing off the concrete walls. Marcus reloaded his weapon. Then let's make this count. Claire turned toward the street, wind whipping her hair, her eyes steady on the chaos ahead. She whispered, half to herself, half to the memory of Alan, "You tried to bury the truth, but I'm the one digging it up." And with that, she stepped back into the light, ready to face whatever came next. The night was thick with rain, washing over the asphalt as sirens screamed in the distance. Emily gripped the steering wheel tightly, her eyes locked on the faint red taillights ahead. She wasn't just chasing a man anymore, she was chasing the truth that had haunted her for years. Jake's car swerved off the main road and disappeared into a row of old warehouses by the river. The place looked abandoned, the perfect hideout for a man running from everything he'd ever built on lies. Emily stopped the car a few blocks away, stepping out into the downpour. The rain soaked through her jacket instantly, but she didn't care. She moved silently, her hand hovering near her holster. The sound of her boots splashing in the puddles echoed faintly as she approached the warehouse door, slightly ajar. Inside, the air was cold and heavy with the smell of rust and oil. A single light flickered near the ceiling, revealing the shape of Jake packing back and forth. "Come out, Emily," he called out. His voice was calm, too calm. "You were always too smart for your own good." She stepped into the open, her badge catching a glint of the dim light. "You should have thought twice before threatening my son," she said. "It's over, Jake." Jake smirked, holding up a small device, a detonator. "Over? No, this is just where the truth finally explodes." Her eyes darted to the side, a small crate near the wall had wires running into it. "Explosives," he was serious. "What do you want?" she asked, keeping her voice even. "I want justice, real justice," he snapped. "You think you're the only one who lost something, you think being a detective makes you the hero. The system ruined me just like it ruined you." Emily shook her head. "You chose this path, I didn't." Jake's eyes burned with rage. "The department framed me, they used me, threw me away, and then buried the truth. I was never a fake cop, Emily. I was undercover until they erased me." For a moment, silence filled the space, the kind that makes your heart forget how to beat. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. Jake's face twisted with pain. "Your husband, David, he wasn't supposed to die. I was his partner. We were tracking the same ring that betrayed both of us. But when he got too close, they killed him and pinned it on me." Emily froze, her breath catching in her throat. "You're lying." Jake took a step closer, dropping the detonator to the ground. His voice cracked. "You think I wanted this? I tried to warn you years ago, but after the explosion, they scrubbed my name, erased my record, and left me for dead." The world seemed to tilt beneath her. All those nights staring at the case files, the unsolved questions, the missing reports, it all came flooding back. "Why now?" she asked softly. "Because they're still out there," Jake said, "and they're watching us right now." Before she could respond, a sudden gunshot rang out. Jake staggered backward, clutching his shoulder. Emily dove for cover, pulling her weapon as shadows moved across the catwalk above. 3 men in black tactical gear descended from the upper level, guns raised. They weren't police, their movements were too sharp, too coordinated. "Drop the weapon, detective," one of them ordered. Emily's heart pounded. "Who are you?" The man smirked. "Cleanup crew, you've seen too much." Jake groaned, trying to reach for his gun. Emily fired first, taking out the nearest attacker. The room erupted into chaos, gunfire, ricochets, shouts of pain, the air filled with smoke and fear. She crawled behind a metal beam, reloading quickly, her eyes scanning the chaos for Jake. He was on the floor, bleeding heavily but still alive. She took out another man, her instincts taking over, the detective in her resurfacing fully. It was the fight she'd trained for her entire life. When the smoke finally cleared, only one man remained, the leader. He aimed his rifle at Jake's head. "End of the line," he said. Emily stepped out from behind the beam, aiming her gun squarely at him. "No, this ends now." For a moment, time seemed to stop. The man hesitated long enough for Emily to fire. The bullet struck true. He fell backward, motionless. Rainwater dripped through a hole in the roof, washing away the smoke and blood. Emily dropped her gun and ran to Jake's side. His breathing was shallow, his voice weak. "I told you I wasn't lying," he whispered. "I know," she said softly. "I believe you." He managed a faint smile. "There's a flash drive in my car, everything's on it, the names, the files, the truth. Hold on, Jake, we can get you help." But it was too late. His eyes glazed over, the last of his strength fading with the storm. Emily sat there for a long time, the rain pouring through the roof, mixing with tears she didn't even feel anymore. By morning, the real police had arrived. Reports were filed. The warehouse was sealed off. But the department stayed eerily silent about the men she'd fought. No records, no identities, nothing. Later that week, Emily stood in front of her husband's grave. The flash drive in her hand, the truth weighed heavy in her pocket, a truth that could destroy everything she thought she knew about the system she once served. She looked down at the grave, her voice steady but filled with pain. "They wanted me to stop asking questions, David, but now I have all the answers." As she turned to leave, a black car slowed near the edge of the cemetery. A window rolled down just enough for her to see a familiar face watching her. One of the men from the warehouse, alive. He smiled faintly and drove away. Emily's pulse quickened. She looked at the flash drive again, realizing this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something much bigger. She slid on her sunglasses, her reflection hard and determined in the car window. "You came for a single mom," she whispered to herself, "but now you've woken the real detective." As she drove away, the storm clouds parted, sunlight breaking through, glinting off the badge that still rested on her dashboard. The case wasn't over, it had only just reopened.